The sun had already dipped behind the trees, painting the sky a soft shade of gold as Emily Turner stood by the kitchen counter, slicing vegetables for dinner. The house was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. Her husband, Michael, was away on another business trip, his third one that month, and the familiar loneliness had started to settle in again. The silence used to bother her. Now it just felt normal. Her son Ethan was upstairs, his music barely audible through the floor. He had just turned 18, tall like his father, but with Emily's calm eyes. Over the past few months, she had noticed small changes in him. He was quieter, more thoughtful, sometimes distant, but always kind. He often helped her around the house without being asked, fixing light bulbs, bringing in groceries, making her tea when she looked tired. Emily found comfort in his presence. Even when few words were exchanged between them, she poured soup into 2 bowls and called out, "Ethan, dinner's ready." A few seconds later, he appeared at the doorway, still in his gray hoodie, his hair slightly messy. "Smells good, Mom," he said, sliding into his usual seat. They ate quietly at first. The air between them was peaceful but carried a certain heaviness, the kind that comes from things unsaid. Emily finally spoke. "How was your day? Did you finish that essay for school?" "Almost," he replied with a shrug. "But honestly, I was just helping fix the fence out back. It was falling apart." Emily smiled softly. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to," he said. The words lingered longer than she expected. It wasn't just what he said, it was the tone, warm and sincere. For a moment she felt seen, appreciated, something she hadn't felt from Michael in a while. Michael was a good man, a hard-working husband, but lately seemed like a ghost in their marriage, always gone, always distracted. She missed the version of him that used to listen, used to laugh as they finished dinner. Ethan stood and began clearing the table. "I'll do the dishes," he said before she could protest. Emily laughed softly. "What did I do to deserve this kind of help?" He looked at her with a small grin. "You've done everything for everyone. Maybe it's time someone did something for you." Her smile faded just slightly. His words echoed in her chest. She wanted to tell him she was fine, that this was just how life worked, that women learned to live quietly with missing pieces. But she couldn't, not tonight. Later, after he went upstairs, Emily sat alone in the living room, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea. The ticking of the clock filled the silence. She looked at the family photos on the wall, Michael's smile in the wedding picture, Ethan's small hands clutching hers in a photo from years ago. Life had moved fast, too fast. Too fast. Somewhere along the way, she had become more caretaker than person, more presence than partner. She sighed and leaned back on the couch, closing her eyes. The house felt too big, too empty. And though she didn't want to admit it, she missed being noticed. A soft sound made her open her eyes. Ethan stood by the door holding a blanket. "You fell asleep sitting up," he said quietly. "You'll hurt your neck." She blinked, startled. "Oh, I didn't even realize I dozed off." "Ah." He draped the blanket over her shoulders and smiled gently. "You should rest, Mom." She nodded, her voice low. "Thank you, sweetheart." He gave a faint nod and turned toward the stairs. Before disappearing, he said, "Good night, Mom." "Good night, Ethan." When he was gone, Emily looked around the dim room, her heart heavy but touched. He reminded her of a time when love didn't have to be spoken, when it showed up quietly, through gestures, through care. Still, she couldn't shake the growing ache inside. She wondered if Michael would call tonight, if he would even remember. Her phone buzzed once, a message from him, late meeting. "Love you," she typed back. "Love you too," but it felt like sending words into a void. She stared at the screen, then placed the phone down. Upstairs, she heard Ethan moving about, opening drawers, maybe listening to music again. For a strange second, she envied his world uncomplicated. Open, still full of choices. Emily rose, turned off the kitchen lights, and climbed the stairs slowly. Outside, rain began to fall, soft and steady. It tapped against the window like a quiet reminder that the night was still alive. Even if everything inside her felt paused, she stopped at Ethan's door. A warm glow came from underneath it. She hesitated, then gently knocked. "Yeah," he said from inside, "just wanted to say good night." She replied softly. "Night, Mom," he answered. She smiled faintly and went to her room. The bed felt too big without Michael. She pulled the blanket close and stared at the ceiling. Her thoughts drifted to the quiet dinner, to Ethan's words, to the strange comfort she felt when he was near. She wasn't sure why the feeling unsettled her so much. Maybe because she realized how much of her life had revolved around waiting for her husband to come home, waiting for the loneliness to fade, waiting for something to make her feel alive again, outside. Thunder rolled far away, soft and low. The wind rattled the windows gently. And as she finally drifted to sleep, a single thought stayed with her. Maybe her son saw something she couldn't admit to herself yet. Maybe he saw the part of her that had grown tired of pretending everything was fine. But for now, Emily pushed the thought aside. Tomorrow would be another ordinary day, another quiet morning in a quiet house. Still, deep down, something was shifting, small, invisible. But real she just didn't know it yet. Because the next day, something Ethan would do, something simple, something kind would change the way. She saw her life forever, and it would all begin with that quiet morning after the rain. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains, spreading a soft glow across the kitchen. Emily stood by the counter, pouring coffee into her favorite mug, the one Michael had given her years ago. The rain had stopped, leaving the air fresh and cool. She could hear birds outside, the faint sound of Ethan's footsteps upstairs. Everything looked peaceful. Yet something inside her felt unsettled, a quiet stirring she couldn't explain. Ethan came down a few minutes later, his hair messy, holding his backpack. "Morning," he said with a sleepy smile. "Morning," Emily replied, handing him a plate of toast and eggs. "Did you sleep well?" "Yeah," he said, sitting down. "I've got a short day today. Mr. Collins moved our class to online, so I'll be home early." Emily nodded. "That's nice. I could use some company." He glanced at her with a grin. "You're saying that now, but you'll be tired of me by lunch." She laughed quietly. "I doubt it." It was moments like these that reminded her of when he was younger, when their mornings were filled with noise and chatter. When Michael used to join them at the table. Back then, life felt balanced. Now everything seemed stretched thin. Love, time, connection. She tried not to think about it too much. After Ethan left for his short morning class, Emily began her chores. She cleaned, folded laundry, watered the plants, trying to keep her mind busy. But her thoughts drifted to Michael's distance, to the quiet ache of missing something she couldn't name. She wasn't unhappy exactly, but she wasn't content either. It was like standing still while the world kept moving. By noon, she heard the front door open. "Mom," Ethan called in the kitchen. She answered. He walked in holding a paper bag. "I stopped by the bakery. Thought we could have lunch together." Emily looked surprised. "You didn't have to do that." He shrugged. "I wanted to." "You've been tired lately," she smiled, touched by the thought. They unpacked the food, sandwiches, pastries, and 2 small cups of coffee. They sat by the window, talking about small things, the weather, his classes, the neighbors. For the first time in weeks, Emily felt light, almost happy. At one point, Ethan said, "You should do something for yourself, Mom. You never take a break." She looked up. "A break?" "Yeah," he said. "You're always doing things for everyone else. Go somewhere. Do something you like. You used to paint, remember?" Emily laughed softly. "I haven't painted in years." "Then maybe you should start again," he said, smiling. "It'd be good for you." His words stayed with her. After lunch, when Ethan went upstairs, found herself opening a drawer in the hallway, the one filled with old art supplies. Brushes, dried tubes of paint, half-used sketchbooks. She sat down, opened one, and stared at the unfinished sketches. Faces, flowers, places she used to dream about. Her chest tightened. Without thinking much, she picked up a pencil and began to draw. The movement felt natural, almost like breathing. She lost track of time until she heard Ethan behind her. "That's really good," he said quietly. She turned, startled. Oh, I didn't hear you. He smiled. Guess I was right. You still have it? She looked at the sketch, a soft outline of a mother and child sitting by a window. She hadn't even realized what she was drawing until now. Something about it made her heart ache in a sweet, quiet way. They spent the afternoon together, fixing small things around the house. The curtain rod in the living room, a loose hinge on the cabinet. It felt easy, like old times. Every time she looked at him, she saw traces of Michael. But there was something gentler in Ethan, a kind of attentiveness she hadn't felt from her husband in years. By evening, Emily made dinner, pasta with roasted vegetables. As they ate, she checked her phone again. Still no call from Michael. Dad's still working late. Ethan asked. Yeah, she said softly. He's busy this week. Ethan didn't say anything, but his eyes said he understood more than he let on. After dinner, they cleaned up together, joking and laughing. For a moment, it felt like the kind of evening families are supposed to have. Calm, simple, connected. When Ethan went upstairs to shower, Emily sat on the porch, sipping tea and watching the sunset. The world outside looked peaceful. But her thoughts were tangled. She thought about her marriage, how it had quietly drifted into routine. Michael wasn't cruel. He was just absent. Their conversations had become lists of errands, reminders, and updates. Love had turned into habit, but with Ethan around, she felt warmth again. Not in a confusing way, but in a way that reminded her what it felt like to be cared for, noticed. She felt guilty for even feeling that way, but it was the truth. Later that night, as she was getting ready for bed, Ethan knocked on her door. I fixed your night lamp, he said. It was flickering. Oh, you didn't have to do that, she said, smiling. He shrugged. I like fixing things. Makes me feel useful. She nodded. You always were good at that. He smiled, then hesitated before saying goodnight. For a brief moment, she thought she saw something in his expression. Concern, maybe sadness. It passed quickly, but it stayed with her. When he left, Emily lay awake thinking. She realized that while Michael's distance had hurt her, it was Ethan's kindness that had kept her steady all this time. He had grown up quietly, taking care of her in small ways she hadn't noticed until now. She turned off the lamp and looked out the window. The moonlight fell across the yard, silver and soft. Somewhere in the dark, she felt a strange mix of peace and unease. She didn't know where life was leading her. But she knew one thing. Things couldn't stay the same. That night, as the wind whispered through the trees, Emily made herself a quiet promise. She would stop waiting for someone else to make her happy. She would try to rebuild her life piece by piece, even if it meant facing the loneliness she had avoided for so long. But what she didn't know was that the next few days would bring an unexpected turn, one that would make her question everything she thought she knew about love, family, and herself. And it would all start with a single knock on the front door the next morning. The next morning started like any other, calm and ordinary. Emily woke early, made breakfast, and opened the curtains to let the golden light fill the room. The rain had cleared completely, and the air felt new, almost like a fresh start. She tried to keep her mind busy with simple routines. Michael still hadn't called, but she didn't want to dwell on it. She wanted peace, even if she had to create it herself. Ethan was still asleep upstairs when the doorbell rang. Emily hesitated. Visitors were rare, especially this early. Wiping her hands on a towel, she walked to the front door and opened it. Standing there was a woman tall, with short blonde hair, holding a small box. She smiled politely. Good morning. I'm Lisa. I live a few streets down. I think this package was delivered to us by mistake. Emily smiled back, relieved it wasn't something serious. Oh, thank you. That happens sometimes. She took the box and noticed the label, Michael's name. Yes, this is ours. I appreciate it. Lisa nodded but didn't leave right away. You're Emily, right? I've seen you at the market. Yes, Emily said, surprised. It's a small town, I guess. Lisa smiled faintly. It is. My husband mentioned your husband once. They work in the same firm, I think. Emily's heart skipped slightly. Really? What's your husband's name? David Miller, Lisa said casually. He mentioned Michael a few times, said they'd been traveling together for some meetings lately. Emily froze for half a second. Traveling together. That didn't sound right. Michael had told her he was traveling alone for business. She tried to keep her tone calm. Oh, that's nice. I didn't realize they knew each other that well. Lisa didn't seem to notice the discomfort. Yeah, small world, right? Anyway, I'll let you get back to your day. Emily thanked her and closed the door, her hands slightly trembling. She stared at the box, wondering what was inside, but more than that, she was wondering what was true. When Ethan came downstairs a few minutes later, he noticed her pale face. Mom, you're okay? She forced a smile. Yeah, I'm fine. Just thinking. He studied her concern in his eyes. You don't look fine. Emily didn't want to worry him, so she brushed it off. It's nothing, sweetheart. Just something about your dad's work. The rest of the morning passed quietly, but the thought of Lisa's words wouldn't leave Emily's mind. She replayed them again and again. They've been traveling together for some meetings lately. Why hadn't Michael mentioned it? Why lie about something so simple? By afternoon, she couldn't sit still. She decided to go through some of Michael's old receipts and work files, not out of suspicion, but because she needed clarity. In the drawer beside his desk, she found a few hotel invoices. The names matched Lisa's husband's company. The dates matched his recent business trips. Emily sat down, staring at them. It wasn't proof of anything wrong, but it was enough to make her feel distant. Like the ground beneath her had shifted slightly. When Ethan came into the room, she quickly closed the drawer. He leaned on the doorframe, watching her carefully. You've been quiet all day, she exhaled. Just tired. He nodded, but didn't believe her. I know you, Mom. Something's bothering you. You always fidget when you're anxious. She smiled faintly. I do. He grinned softly. Yeah, you twist your ring without realizing it. Emily looked down. He was right. She was twisting her wedding ring again. She began, then stopped. I just feel like something's changing, and I don't know what it means yet. Ethan walked closer. Whatever it is, you'll handle it. You always do. She looked up at him, realizing how much he'd grown. Not just taller, but wiser, steadier. His words were calm and reassuring. And she felt comforted in a way she hadn't in a long time. The next day, Michael finally called. His voice was casual, too casual. Hey, just checking in. Things are running late here. Where's here? She asked quietly. He hesitated. Boston. We had some unexpected meetings. Her stomach tightened. With David Miller. There was a pause. What? How do you know that name? Lisa Miller stopped by yesterday, she said evenly. She mentioned you two have been working together. Other pause? Yeah, we've been collaborating on a few projects. Why? Emily forced a soft tone. No reason. Just curious. They hung up shortly after, and she sat for a long time, thinking. She didn't want to jump to conclusions. She wasn't that kind of person. But she couldn't ignore how disconnected they'd become. And it wasn't about other people. It was about how invisible she had started to feel. That evening, as she sat on the porch, Ethan joined her again. Want to go for a drive? He asked suddenly. A drive? Yeah, he said. You always said driving helped you think. She smiled faintly. All right. They drove through the quiet streets of their small town. The sky was painted orange and pink with the setting sun. The air smelled of pine and summer dust. Emily watched the road ahead, the world blurring softly outside the window. Ethan glanced at her. You know, Dad's not the only person who should make you feel seen. She turned to him. What do you mean? He shrugged. You've spent your whole life taking care of people. Maybe it's time someone takes care of you. His words hit deeper than he probably meant. She felt her throat tighten. That's kind of you to say. It's true, he said gently. You deserve to be happy. They drove in silence after that, the hum of the car filling the space between them. Emily didn't know how to respond. She wasn't looking for attention, but she realized she'd forgotten what it felt like to be truly appreciated. When they returned home, stood by the window, looking at the faint glow of the porch light. Ethan was upstairs again, probably listening to music. She felt gratitude for him for his calmness, his quiet strength. But she also felt a new kind of uncertainty rising in her, a sense that something was about to change. Whether she wanted it or not, the next morning, she decided to visit Lisa. She needed to clear her mind. Maybe she was overthinking. Maybe she just needed to face the truth head on. When she reached Lisa's house, she was greeted warmly. They talked about small things, weather, families, daily routines. Eventually, Emily brought up Michael again, casually. "So, how long has your husband been working with mine?" Lisa smiled. "Oh, just a few months. They travel a lot together. My husband says Michael's great company, though he did mention Michael always seems a little distracted." Emily's heart ached at that. She thanked Lisa for her time and left. On her way home, she stopped by the lake, the same one she used to visit when she needed to think. The wind was cool, and the reflection of the clouds rippled gently across the water. She stood there for a long time, realizing that she couldn't control Michael's choices, but she could control how she moved forward. When she got home, Ethan was waiting on the porch. "You okay?" he asked. She smiled softly, her eyes tired but calm. "Yeah," she said. "I think I finally am." But deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. The next few days would reveal the truth and force her to make a choice that would change everything. And that truth would come not from Michael, but from Ethan. The morning began quietly, the kind of quiet that comes before something important. The sky outside was pale blue, and sunlight spilled softly through the window. Emily stood at the kitchen counter, pouring herself a cup of coffee, her mind heavy with everything she had learned. Michael had been away for weeks, and though he called occasionally, his words now felt distant, rehearsed, almost hollow. Ethan came downstairs, already dressed, his expression unreadable. He looked older lately, not just in appearance, but in the way he carried himself. Emily smiled faintly, trying to seem normal. "Morning," she said softly. "Morning," he replied, sitting at the table. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The ticking clock filled the silence between them. Finally, Ethan said, "You've been thinking a lot." She nodded. "It's been a strange few days." He leaned forward, his eyes steady. "You found something, didn't you? About Dad?" Emily's heart skipped. "How did you—" He gave a small, knowing smile. "You've been quieter. You only get that way when something's bothering you deeply." She hesitated, then sighed. "I think your father hasn't been honest with me. I don't know how serious it is, but I can feel it." Ethan looked down at his hands. "I already knew." The words hit her like a wave. "What?" He looked up slowly. "I didn't want to tell you until I was sure. I saw messages on his tablet when he forgot to log out one night. They weren't bad, but they didn't sound like something you say to a colleague." Emily froze, her breath shallow. "How long have you known?" "About a month," Ethan said quietly. "I didn't say anything because I didn't want to hurt you. I thought maybe I was wrong." She felt her hands trembling slightly as she sat down beside him. "You shouldn't have had to see that." He shook his head. "Mom, I'm not a kid anymore. I just didn't want you to think I was taking sides." Emily stared at the window, the morning light blurring through her tears. "I gave that man my whole heart, and now I don't even know who he really is." Ethan reached across the table, placing his hand over hers. "You still know who you are. That's what matters." For a moment, they sat in silence, mother and son, two hearts carrying different kinds of pain. Then Ethan stood. "I think you need to talk to him, face to face." She nodded slowly. "I will." Later that afternoon, Michael returned unexpectedly. Emily was standing by the window when she saw his car pull into the driveway. Her pulse quickened. He looked tired as he got out, but not surprised to see her, almost as if he knew this moment was coming. When he walked in, the air felt heavy. "Emily," he said softly, setting his bag down. "Michael," she replied, calm but distant. He looked around. "Where's Ethan?" "Out for a walk," she said. "It's just us." He nodded, uneasy. You sound serious? I am, she said. I talked to Lisa Miller. He froze. Lisa? Yes, she continued. She mentioned her husband's been traveling with you. You never told me that. Ah. Michael sighed, rubbing his forehead. I didn't think it mattered. We've been trying to land a new client together. Then why hide it? She asked quietly. He didn't answer. She stepped closer. And why have you been so distant lately? Why do your calls feel forced? He looked at her, his eyes heavy with guilt. Because I didn't know how to tell you I'm unhappy. Her heart ached. Unhappy? Michael, we've built a life together. We've raised a son. I know, he said quickly. But somewhere along the way, we stopped being us. I buried myself in work. You buried yourself in the house. I started talking to someone not romantically, but emotionally. It helped me escape. Emily closed her eyes, taking a breath. So, instead of fixing us, you found someone to fill the silence. He didn't respond. After a long moment, she said softly, You could have told me. We could have tried. I didn't want to hurt you, he whispered. But you did anyway, she said. By pretending nothing was wrong. Tears welled in her eyes, but she stood firm. Michael, I'm not angry. I'm just tired. I can't live like this anymore. He looked shattered. Are you saying you want to leave me? I'm saying, she said gently, that I need to find myself again. And maybe you do too. He nodded slowly, tears glistening in his eyes. I never meant to lose you, Emily. I know, she said softly. But sometimes love changes. It doesn't disappear, it just becomes something else. He reached out to touch her hand, but she stepped back. I'll always care about you, she whispered. But we need time apart. Michael left quietly that evening, his suitcase in hand. Ethan returned home just as the car disappeared down the road. He saw the look on his mother's face, a mix of sadness and strength. Is he gone? He asked. She nodded. For now. Ethan stepped forward and hugged her tightly. You did the right thing. She held him close, finally letting the tears fall freely. It doesn't feel right, she whispered, but it feels necessary. Days passed. The house felt different, emptier, but also lighter. Emily started spending time in the garden again, rediscovering small joys she'd long forgotten. She painted red novels and took evening walks by the lake. Ethan often joined her, and their bond deepened with quiet understanding. One afternoon, they sat watching the sunset. Ethan turned to her. You know, scared at first. But now I see, sometimes losing something gives you back what really matters. Emily smiled, the corners of her eyes soft with emotion. And what's that? Peace, he said simply. She looked at the water, golden under the fading light. Yes, she whispered. Peace. Weeks later, Michael called. His voice was calm. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I know, she said gently. I hope you're doing okay. I'm trying, he replied. Maybe one day we can talk, really talk. Maybe, she said. But right now, I need to keep moving forward. After the call, she put her phone down and looked out the window. The sky had turned soft purple, and the first stars were appearing. Ethan was outside working on his old car, humming quietly to himself. She watched him with pride and love, realizing how strong they'd both become through all of it. That night, as she turned off the lights and walked upstairs, Emily felt a quiet strength settle in her heart. She had lost something, yes, but she had also gained something far more precious. Clarity, courage, and the freedom to start again. In the quiet of her room, she whispered to herself, I'm going to be okay. And she was, because sometimes heartbreak isn't the end of love, it's the beginning of finding yourself again.